Welcome to Chicago Bulls Chat with C-Red UK. This podcast is part of the Fans First Sports Network. Wherever or however you're listening, make sure to rate, review and subscribe. It helps us out and means you never miss another episode. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the thumbs up button and leave some comments for us to get back to. And for all the C-Red UK action, check out the Discord channel and across the socials. Now, over to your hosts, Matt Hearn and Neil Dunn.
Welcome back. I'm Matt, and as usual, joined by Neil. I would ask how you're doing, Neil, but you can't really talk properly.
No, it's going to be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, it's because you've been shouting all day at a load of kids.
Pretty much, yeah, shouting at a load of kids for most of today, and I was at a concert last night where I was desperately trying to sing along, and yeah, it's kind of screwed up my voice for tonight. But look, we'll get through it.
Yeah, so we'll get into it. Obviously, not a lot of news really at the minute. It's more rumours and stuff, but there is one bit of news I wanted to touch on, and that was the unfortunate passing of Chet the Jet Walker over the weekend. Obviously, a Bulls legend, as we were just saying, before our time, but obviously we couldn't let it pass without sort of mentioning it.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot of publications that have gone around from the likes of Sam Smith and people that actually were around when Chet was playing. And we did a thing the other week about the greatest Bulls. Does DeMar DeRozan fit into that? And obviously, Chet was one of them players that got left off a lot of people's lists. But when you look back at it, he probably is up there. Obviously, recently inducted into the Bulls Ring of Honor, as much of a disaster as that turned out to be. But, an honor nonetheless. And, obviously, a Bulls legend, a Bulls great. Like we said, unfortunately, we've just never seen him play. He retired in, was it 1975? Something like that.
I was -3.
Yeah, I was -10. So that obviously why we can't really say too much on him as a player, but when you look back and you look through the history books and stuff like that, he is up there. So I don't know what you wanted to say on it.
No, you just have to give someone that got that kind of standing within the organization a nod. May he rest in peace. He'll be remembered, and it's good to see, in his passing, unfortunately, but it's good to see that it has brought a light to lots of people like ourselves to just get to know a little bit more about him and the impact he had as a Chicago Bull and in the NBA in general. One thing to mention is the fact that he is still the second highest scoring Bull of all time behind Michael Jordan with a 56 piece. And you can't ignore that really.
Yeah. So like I said, we're not going to go too much into it because we don't want to sound like we're sort of talking about something we don't really know about, I guess. But obviously we couldn't let it go without mentioning it. So thoughts and all that with his family, friends, and people that knew him. Yeah. I'm sure Bulls will do something to pay their own little tribute to him as and when this maybe when the season starts up again, whatever. But yeah, moving on from that, like I was saying, not a lot of news. It's mainly rumours, and we'll cover a few of the rumours as we move into part 2 of what we started last week. And that is basically we're dissecting the roster in terms of, is it time to move on from certain players, what we do, kind of what we hope AK does. Obviously, we're now 2 weeks out from the draft, and there's more rumours coming out about the draft and that 11th pick. Last week it was we were moving up for Donovan Clingan, and then last week it was we're moving up for Matas Buzelis, as well as we've made a promise to Devin Carter.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we're getting all these picks from and stuff like that, but it's the same people that, or it was the same person that wrote about moving up for Klingon as moving up for Buzelis. They just seem to be clutching at straws for me.
Yeah.
They kind of know what Bulls want, and they just throw it out there as a bit of clickbait, basically. And it's the same as some of the rumours that we'll get into in a bit. There's no sort of substance to them. Basically, it's just basically these reporters that supposedly have inside information and stuff like that. But as we've always said, we wait for the Shams and Woj bombs to drop, and then we wait for Casey Johnson to later confirm it.
Yeah.
That's how we work. We both said we hate this time of season with all these rumours and stuff like that.
Crazy
At the end of the day,
things.
I don't even think AK knows what he wants to do. So how these insiders supposedly know, But anyway, we'll throw our own thoughts out there on the roster and rumours and whatever else we want to do. So next up from after last week is DeMar DeRozan. And the reason why we've left it till this week is because I think the next few players have got some meat to it to talk about, haven't they? Obviously, DeMar's probably up there with Zach as the biggest sort of piece that we need to work out what we're doing with. Obviously, free agent. They've supposedly offered him the 40 million a year deal that's been turned down and stuff like that. And the thing with like DeMar is he's more valuable to us than he is to any other team in the NBA. And he's also more expensive to us than he is to any other team in the NBA. We're reportedly offering him 40 million a year, yet if he decides to walk, the LA teams and whoever else is interested are reportedly offering him 16 to 20 million a year. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that all depends on how much he wants to go home, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's been on a couple of podcasts and stuff like that recently as well, where I think the other one he said there's three things he wants: happiness, winning, and money. Well, he's going to get money from Chicago.
Yeah.
He's happy in Chicago. It depends what he defines as winning.
Well,
is it winning a game? Is it winning a ring? Because Bulls probably not going to offer him that. So he's got 2 out of 3 if he stays in Chicago.
Winning the assist of the year.
Well, he's done that. And look, we've said time and time again, we both love DeMar and what he's done for Bulls. We both put him up there as one of our top 10 Bulls of all time. If he stays, he probably moves further up that. And I think, unfortunately, the time has come to move on from DeMar. Because I don't think he's stopping players from developing, but he is stopping players from being the true self, if that makes sense. Because for the last 3 years, when we've needed someone to get it done, we've gone to DeMar.
Yeah.
And we need to get away from doing that. And unfortunately, it's like I said I don't know if I said it to you in private or if I've actually put it out there before, but Bulls fans were saying they wanted Kevin Durant, they wanted LeBron James, etc., etc. When all these rumours start going around. Now, obviously, I'm not saying DeMar's on their level, but if we got either of them players in, who's the ball going to get points?
It's going to them.
And it's because of the veteran. Simple as, do you know what I mean? And that's why it goes to DeMar, because he's trusted. He's done it. He's shown he can do it. But you bring him back, where's the ball going?
It's going to DeMar.
And all right, essentially it is stopping players like P. Will, Kobe, Ayo, whatever, from taking that next step in being clutch and being the ball handler, however you want to describe it. But and then at the same time, you can't let him walk for free or for nothing, because we still owe Spurs a pick for him as well. So we don't want to be in a situation where Damar's not on the team, yet the trade's still not complete, or the sign and trade. So to me, like I say, I wouldn't be mad if he's back because I do like him, but I think for the benefit of the team, we sign and trade him. That's where I'm at with it at the minute.
Yeah. Sign and trade makes a lot of sense. If you want to see him go, obviously you don't want to see him walk away just out the door with nothing. So if he is going to go, and he does have a lot of respect for Chicago and his time in Chicago, you'd hope that they could come together to sort out some sort of a sign and trade deal somewhere. And we know that AK is capable of doing that. He's done that in the past. There are a lot of areas that we don't necessarily know if we can trust AK to fulfill certain ways of doing things, but that is one that he has managed to do. So I think that's probably, if DeMar is going to go, I'd say that's probably the most likely avenue that they take. However, all signs point to DeMar staying. And like yourself, I like DeMar an awful lot. What he has done as a Bull has been incredible. What he will potentially continue to do if he stays a Bull will probably be just as incredible or not far off. I do love the way he mentors the young guys. And as for the way you say this development, is he hindering the development? It's kind of a bit of a catch-22, really, isn't it? Because you want the ball in DeMar's hands because he's tried and tested. And, you want someone to win you the game if it's on the line. And he's up there as one of the most clutch players in the NBA. And he can do it. He's done it on many, many occasions for the Bulls. But I guess by him being there, he's that safety net for the rest of the players, that they never have to test themselves. They never need to put themselves into that position, or incredibly unlikely, because everybody knows it's going to DeMar. And the most likely situation is the ball comes in from the sideline or the end line, gets into DeMar's hands, and nobody else sees the ball. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing, but that's normally the game plan, right? So if DeMar wasn't there and there's no other superstar clutch player, it means that someone will have to try. At the moment, there is no try because we know already what's going to happen. And again, I've said this in the past, and I'm not likening DeMar to Michael Jordan, right? But the thing with Michael Jordan was everybody knew it was going to Mike, right? Everybody knew that. Yet two of the most crucial game-winning shots in the history of the dynasty, MJ passed the ball in the last second for somebody else to take that shot. And that showed his willingness to confuse the opposition, but it also showed his trust in his teammates. And I'm not saying that DeMar doesn't trust his teammates, but he trusts himself more. And I think that's where it kind of needs a little bit of adjustment. And who knows, maybe if he does stay, maybe he's getting to that point of his career where he will start kind of saying to himself, okay, it's no longer time to talk these guys up. I need to let these guys build themselves up. And that will come through failure. That will come through missing opportunities, but still taking them. And hopefully that will develop into actually getting to a point where somebody or multiple players will have the confidence to take and hit those shots.
Yeah, and obviously DeMar will come out in these interviews and say, I've told Kobe to take the shot and stuff like that, like he did a few times last season. But the players have just ran for DeMar.
That's it.
Because Billy only trusts his veterans. You know, he's only just learning to trust the likes of Kobe. You know, ideally, if the ball wasn't going to DeMar, you want it to go to Kobe because he is that, or was developing into that player. But like I say, with DeMar being there, it just stops the ball going to Kobe or whoever you want it to be.
Yeah.
You know, and just on the sort of mentorship, obviously he was on the I can't remember the name of it now, but I did put a few videos out, the 1025 show or something like that, and there weren't a lot of Bulls talk on it, but he did go into the Houston thing last year with Dylan Brooks and said he don't like him. And he also, when he went to a WNBA game with Dale and Terry, give him some advice and stuff like that. And that's something that DeMar brings to the team that some vets may not.
Absolutely.
And that could be not invaluable as such, but worth that little bit more money if they do end up keeping him. If you like that kind of thing. Because it's not enough for some people, obviously.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, like I say, for me with DeMar, it's sign and trade him. I don't particularly want to see him leave, but you know that's kind of where I'm at with him now. I think he becomes the first player that we've actually in this. I know we had Caruso to move as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
Last week. So get rid of all the big ones.
Yeah.
Next up, Ayo. Now, for me, you keep him at the minute, but open to offers, basically. I mean, he's only $7 million a year. Very team friendly, improved massively or bounced back massively. And I said to you last week, if he stays on Bulls, I think he's going to fast become my favourite Bull.
You did
at the minute. And obviously, what got us onto this topic was the love hates thing. You know, you love these players, and it hurts to see them go. And that'd be how it would be for me with Ayo, because if he carries on developing at the rate he did last year, he's going to be very, very valuable to this team.
Yeah.
But he's also very, very cheap, and I think it just leaves you open to offers from around the league. And if it's the right offer, say, I don't know, a player and a first or something like that, or a couple of seconds, you've got to look at it, haven't you?
Yeah.
You know, because we've made these mistakes for too long now of keeping older players when there is some value to them, and basically letting the value drop, because in 2 years' time, or maybe a year's time, whatever, you're going to be looking at offering him another extension. And how much money is he going to command with that one? Because it's not going to be 7 million.
No.
And can Bulls afford to pay him more than that?
Bulls can't afford to pay him now.
Exactly. So, like I say, for me, at the minute, we keep him, but open to offers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't want to see Ayo leave. I like him. I think, like you say, his bounce back last year was excellent. Sorry, like I've said in the past, during the course of the season, I think his ascension actually last season was clouded an awful lot by what was going on with Kobe's ascension, and I don't think it was fully appreciated how much Ayo turned his game around and improved. Again, it's this catch-22 situation where you want to see him stay because you want to see him develop and become something with the Bulls, but at the same time, you know, if he doesn't necessarily ascend much further, now's the time to shop him and get something for him. You know, it's the whole playing potential against a reward straight away. And if you can get a decent enough offer, you have to consider it. You have to. And, we're not in a position as a franchise, as a team, as fans, as managers, as whoever, to keep people in hopes and prayers that they become the next big thing. You need to make moves, as much as we may not like them. You need to make moves that ensure progression of the team, not hope that you get lucky with one or two players, because that's kind of how it feels like they're playing it with these developmental players. It's like, we're tossing enough coins in the air and maybe one of them will come up heads, and we'll see how it pans out. But I think Io could definitely be one of the pieces that needs to be considered as a piece to move.
Yeah, I mean, if a team come in with an offer for Zach, for example, but
Right.
part of it was taking Io, is that something that you'd look at?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the whole point, is you have to look at everything. You have to look at every offer that comes in through the door, and not just look at it, but you have to, seriously consider it. Is this offer anyway something that we can stomach? Is this offer going to give us any kind of hope to get out of this hole that we're in, basically? Because, geez, I really squeaked there. To get out of this hole that we're in. Because that's exactly what has happened. They're backed into a corner. Stop laughing at me. They're backed into a corner, and they're going to have to try and get out of it. And I think something like that could be the only way to do so.
Yeah, that's too common. I mean, there was one thing that going around on Twitter last week, over the weekend, whenever it was, and it was, I think it had come from a Bucks Twitter account, and it was a trade for Io that saw Io go into Bucks, and we got I think they've got the 23rd pick or something in this year's draft, and Pat Connaughton. And
Pat Connaughton doesn't really give us what we need. It's just more of the same, isn't it, really?
that 23rd pick as well doesn't really.
Although 23 is a good luck number, but
well, yeah.
No,
but in this draft, it's no.
Although, with a draft like this, the 23rd pick could be nearly as good as the third pick, because it's so unknown.
Yeah, but then they're probably still not going to be as good as Io, and within a few months, Pat Connaughton's probably not at Bulls as well. So you basically given Bucks Io for
23rd pick.
Nothing. Yeah, which could be, he could be out of the league.
Another entry into the Windy City Bulls.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, I think if Io goes, I genuinely think our friend Tim Sinclair would be a little bit upset about not being able to say from Chicago anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've got Javon Carter for that.
Do we?
Yeah, when he gets into the starting lineup.
Yeah, really?
Because we'd have no guards left the way we're going.
Well, yeah, I know. It's gone from surplus to none. Yeah.
So, next up on the list, I think this one's pretty straightforward. Andre Drummond.
Yeah.
Is free agent, and I think he's essentially gone, hasn't he?
I think so too.
I think we spoke about him a couple of weeks back when we give the grades for him. Best backup in the league.
Yeah.
Wants the starting role. Probably going to command more money than what Bulls are currently paying him, and I think they can only go up to like 5 point something. I think he backs himself to get more than that somewhere.
Yeah. And so he should, after the season he put down for the Bulls. I agree with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no problems with him moving on, and I just hope that where he goes, he's happy and continues to enjoy basketball again, as he seemed to in Chicago after his 2-3 years, whatever it was, of being a journeyman. And
yeah,
I mean, there was that video, wasn't there, that went out where he was at some sort of a pickup game or whatever it was, and he basically said he'd lost his way, and
Yeah.
he felt like he had it all, and then all of a sudden he had nothing, and he seemed to develop his love for the game again in Chicago, despite the fact obviously it went the way it did.
Mhm.
And like I say, I just hope he goes somewhere where he's appreciated. If he gets a starting role, he gets a starting role. Can't see it personally, but it's obviously going to be a position of need for Bulls with Drummond gone as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it was a position of
Very
need
much.
with Drummond here. As we saw when we had Vooch out and Drummond was it, who backs up the backup.
I know. Yeah.
So I'm assuming you've got not much more to say on
No,
Drummond.
there's not much more to add to it. I mean, the choice isn't really there for the Bulls to make. It's Drummond's choice to make. I do think he will and should back himself to go somewhere else. I think he'll be doing it with a heavy heart though, because I genuinely think he enjoyed his time in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a big part of him that wishes he could probably stay, but it doesn't work for him financially, and it doesn't work for the Bulls financially for him to stay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you could bring him back on similar deal to what he was on, even just for a year as a last resort sort of thing, I'd do it. But obviously, we're all about change at the minute, and unfortunately, he's an easy piece to move, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, he's already gone,
Yeah.
really. So
That's it.
And another one to finish on the year on the roster, who's kind of gone already, is my guy, Javonte Green.
Do you think he's gone?
Well, he's technically a free agent and his contract expired. We saw what happened back end of not this season gone, which we're still in this season, aren't we? But last season finished it injured and couldn't find anywhere else in the league. Ended up at Warriors G League team,
Which still blows my mind, by the way, how he didn't find some place.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the injury was worse than we knew about, which is probably why, and a lot of other teams or the rest of the league probably knew that. But I think you could see what it meant to Javonte, to Bulls, to the fans when he come back, even just on that initial 10-day. It gives them a boost, and I think if you were trying to re-sign him a year ago, you'd have had to pay 6-7 million for him after what he'd done in his time at Bulls first time round.
Yeah.
The year out with the injury and the few games, he's shown that he can still do it, but is there a team willing to take a chance on him? And how much are they willing to pay him? I think if you can get him back on a vet minimum, Bulls need to, because he is. You speak about, as we mentioned last week, or I did, there's kind of 3 tiers to the team. You've got that 1 to 5, obviously your starters, your 6 to 10, which you kind of like your role players and your ones that can add the spark off the bench, and then you've got your 11 to 15. For me, Javonte perfectly fits in that 6 to 10, 100%. Anywhere up that. And you can even put him into the starting lineup. Everyone says you don't want to see him at the 4. But is he really a 4 when he's out there? I mean, there's 5 of him out there for a start. So
right, yeah, I was going to say he plays 1 through 5, right?
Yeah, and I don't think he really has a position. I know he's technically listed as a guard /3, whatever you want to class him as, but it's just that he's all over the place, isn't he? All right, he's not running the floor or anything like that. He's not picking the plays and stuff. He's just there. He's explosive. He's defensively solid. And if you can get somebody like that, I mean, I don't know what the vet minimum would be for someone like Javonte. I mean, he's not had that many years in the league, has he?
No.
To be, I think maybe 2-3 million off the top of my head. I mean, I'd do it for another year, at least. Maybe a prove it year. Prove that you are healthy. Prove that you can still B, Javonte Green. You're cheap. You fit the team. You know the team. I'd bring him back.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we mentioned last week that you could end up with this logjam at the 3/4 position if the way things are going. Obviously, if Torrey Craig comes back, if we re-sign P. Will, the 11th pick happens to be that player. Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips. You could end up with that logjam. But that if you throw Javonte in there, I say, is he actually a 4? Is he actually a 3? Is he a 2?
He's everything.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, he could be cheap.
Right.
Which is what Bulls need.
Yeah.
So, and this is where that love thing comes in again. I've saying bring back his. When we did the our top 10 favorite players, he was in my top 10 favorite Bulls of all time. So for that reason, I wouldn't want to see him go.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the move to Warriors had worked out for him, I wouldn't have been annoyed at that. You know what I mean? Because he's that guy that I just want to see do well. And the thing is, he loves it in Chicago. I mean, obviously, he said that he was happy to come back to Chicago because his son had just been born in Chicago. Well, I don't know the full story of that, but if he wants to be in Chicago, I mean, I don't know if he's with the mum or whatever, but more time to see his kid.
Right.
And that could be worth $2 million to him, basically.
Absolutely.
So
well,
yeah. What would you do with him?
My take on Javonte Green: you have got to re-sign Javonte Green. The transformation that came over the team when he was back was worth whatever deal you can get him on, which should be, like you say, a really reasonable deal. I got to see him play when I was over there, Flex, and he was incredible. He was incredible. When he steps on the floor, and this is you can hear this in Stacey King's voice when Javonte checks in. He elevates everybody. It's not necessarily that he makes people better, but he just lifts everybody's spirits, everybody's energy levels instantly. And I genuinely don't think that there would be the same level of appreciation for what he is and what he brings in any of the other 29 teams in the NBA. The only place he's going to get that level of love is Chicago. And I think he knows that too. And for that reason, for the fact that you're getting a 5-for-1 deal, and for the fact that his energy levels that he doesn't just have within himself, but that he seems to spread that energy amongst every other player in the team. I think Javonte is an absolute given. He has to be re-signed. He has to come back. He's one of those, like you say, those bench role players that you're going to get cheap, and he's always going to bring you more than you expect from him, even though we all know what he can bring. And for me, he's one of the very, very few must hang on to players on the squad.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, thought you might.
And the next one, who many could have seen as that guy going back a year or two, but I don't think a lot do now, is Zach Lavine. And the relationship's done. Whether you want Zach to stay or not, the relationship between Zach and the Bulls is done. And you only have to listen to Casey Johnson to hear that, because I was thinking when we had Casey on, he said how much he loved covering Zach, and you hear it time and time again on Bulls Talk. You read it time and time again in what he's writing.
Yeah.
But even he says that relationship is done, And he's not saying Zach's a bad person. He's not saying he's a bad player.
No.
But once that trust, I guess, has been lost between team and player and team, you've got to move him, haven't you?
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at with Zach. And I'm all for Zach being moved. I want Zach to be moved, but I'm not a Zach hater. I think it's just ran its course, basically.
Yeah.
You know, you can't fault Zach, I think, for constantly being involved in these rumours, and then Bulls sort of saying, yeah, we're open to offers for him. You can't fault Zach for turning around and saying, right, well, I'm open to be moved. If that's your stance, that's my stance, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, it's a business. He's getting his money regardless of where he's playing or not playing, as the case may be.
Yeah.
And I think last year it was just a bad year, wasn't it? Really, you know, for Zach, the season ending injury, the fact that Bulls looked better without him, the whole turning up to the college game or whatever it was with the clutch hoodie on. And I guess it all started with him saying, I'm open to be moved. You know, and as I've said before, that hasn't made him a bad player overnight.
No.
None of what happened has made him a bad player. He's still going to be a 25-point a night scorer, putting up so many rebounds, so many assists.
Mm-hmm.
He's always going to be seen as not a winning player because he's never been a winning player.
Right.
But you put Zach in the right situation, on the right team with the right players around him, i.e. the Olympics,
Yeah.
is a winning player. And I think obviously the teams that have been sort of rumoured to be interested or possible trade partners or whatever you want to class them as, they're not going to help Zach, are they? They're not going to help that narrative that follows him. You know,
No.
if it's Pistons, if it's one we're going to get into in a minute with the Jazz, he's going to have to be that guy at that team. Whereas if he goes to somewhere like Lakers or possibly Sixers that are contenders, where he's the second, possibly third guy on the team,
Yeah.
then he can become a winning player. But is a team going to want to pay the second/third guy on the team 40, 45 million, whatever he's on? And that's where it becomes tricky for Bulls.
Yep.
Like I say, the latest rumour, I think it was, is it Bobby Marks from ESPN, put out a possible trade to Utah. No picks, just literally Jordan Clarkson and John Collins. It's one of the better ones I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he obviously wasn't saying that this was going to happen. It was just purely him speculating that could be an option that suits both teams. And they're two of the better players I've heard linked to Bulls. But I think you're just basically switching the same type of performance, basically. You know what I mean? They're not winning players.
Two players instead of one.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, they fit in salary cap wise, and you know, John Collins for me, I'd take him, but I just don't know where he fits when you've got Vooch, and if you look at re-signing P. Will, he's not going to want to come off the bench. You know, Jordan Clarkson for me isn't a. He wouldn't get into the starting lineup either, and kind of needs the ball in his hands to do what he needs to do. So if
He
you
also needs
brought
to throw
DeMar
the
back,
ball up quite a few times in order to score.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it gets us off Zach, and yeah, Collins and Clarkson could possibly be moved. And like I say, as a rumour, it's probably one of the better ones I've heard, to be honest. But
yeah, no, I agree. I do think it's one of the better offerings that I've heard out there. But the more and more I'm hearing rumors and trade ideas for Zach, the more I'm thinking that a 2-team job is not going to get it done. I'm thinking this is going to have to be a 3-team, maybe even more deal in order to appease every partner or every party that's involved in it. And I just don't see a return for Zach that's going to be good enough just doing a straight trade with another team.
Yeah, and I mean, just one more rumour. Well, it's not even a rumour. It was just thrown out on CHGO last night by Will Gottlieb. And when I initially heard it, I was like, yeah, I'd do that. But then when I thought about it, and like I said, I don't know how much thought he'd put into it. I think it was just an off-the-cuff solution, basically like what we're doing now,
Yeah.
talking. And it was the 11th pick and Zach to Pistons for their 5th pick and Isaiah Stewart.
Yeah.
And I say initially I was like, yeah, I'd do that. Stewart fills a need, backup big. He's not a bad option to have there, no. I don't think. I think he's on.
He's not afraid to rough it up either.
Yeah, and go after LeBron.
Yeah.
And I think he's on somewhere like 15 mil a year, something like that. So obviously gives us frees up a lot of cap space for us.
Mm-hmm.
Finally get Zach to Pistons, which is what we've all been wanting.
You're going to say finally get Zach to piss off.
Or that as well. But like obviously we just had a little bit of a chat about it before we started recording, and like I said, the more I've thought about it, the more I don't like it. I'd want to get some future assets as well, whether it's a future first or a couple of future seconds, whatever. Just because 2 years down the line, I think it looks like a shocking trade from Bulls' point of view. Apart from the fact that you've got off Zach,
yeah,
chances are in 2 years' time Zach's not at Pistons because they'll have been able to piece together a massive deal that gets him where he wants to be, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And if Zach's back at that 25-point-a-night scorer, doing what he can do, being the explosive, being hot from 3, and we've got Isaiah Stewart possibly looking to become our starter when Vooch is retiring, and the 5th and the 11th picks are just busts as everyone's expecting this draft class to be. Yeah, who wins that trade?
Well, yeah, but the only way that becomes a positive trade or a winning trade for the Bulls is if they somehow come up trumps with one of the picks.
Yeah,
that's the only, well, with the pick as the actual initial proposal is. That's the only way really that you come away kind of going, oh yeah, okay, the Bulls did all right in that. But if the pick doesn't really go anywhere or doesn't develop to the standard that you need them to within the first kind of couple of years, yeah, it looks like a bust trade for the Bulls, big time.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's safe to say we both kind of want Zach gone. And that's not a knock on Zach. It's just
no, it's not. It's just Zach wants still to this point. I believe Zach wants to be the guy, and I think he was given ample opportunity during his tenure at the Bulls to be the guy, and just never was. And he was always kind of trying his best, and he was for a long time one of the only things that was entertaining to watch about the Bulls, and he certainly brought a certain something to the team. He is an elite scorer. He's a flawed player, and we know that. And I think for himself, the sooner that Zach Lavine realizes that he's not a 1A player on any team, that he'll always have to be a co-host of the team.
Yeah.
then that's when his game will elevate that little bit further, because he'll stop trying so hard to be that person and just be himself and play. And like you say, the relationship at Bulls is broken down now. Even if he was to have that kind of an epiphany and come back to Bulls, I just don't think it'll happen here now anyway. He needs to move on in order for that to happen in his career, in his own personal headspace. And the Bulls need to get back whatever they can that is the best possible return for Zach. And unfortunately, because we're in that kind of middle ground between Zach making his next move forward as a player and Zach being able to accept his role as is, it's that little small gap in the middle where the Bulls are going to get screwed as a result of it. No matter what happens, they're not going to get what they should get for a player like Zach Lavine.
Yeah.
And that
I think
sucks, but it's true.
Yeah, I don't think we're winning any trade that involves Zach.
No.
To be honest.
No, so it has to be a case of taking the lesser of however many evils.
Yeah. And yeah. Next up on the list is Julian Phillips. And I mean, I don't think we need to say that much about him. He's obviously on this, was it a 4-year deal that he got? His rookie deal. So he's still got another 3 years left. You just want to see him get minutes.
Yeah.
You want to see him develop. I don't want to see him go down to Windy City again next year, because it doesn't do anything for him. I enjoy watching the Windy City games, and I enjoy it when the players do go down because it makes them a bit more exciting to watch and stuff like that. But Julian Phillips putting up 30 points in a random G League game doesn't do him any favours, I don't think. Doesn't do Bulls any favours. You want to see him getting 10 minutes a night at least, I think, in the NBA. And again, this is what I mean about this logjam, possibly. If we've brought Torrey Craig, or if Torrey Craig opts in, still here, Javonte's still here, obviously Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips. I personally think Phillips has got more potential than the rest of the young players on the team. But one thing that always sticks in my head with Julian Phillips is Mark Eversley said before last season they've got no expectations for him. How do you expect to develop a player when you're not setting out any expectations?
Right.
So that's one thing they've got to do for him. They've got to, whether they did it behind closed doors or whatever, I don't know, but they've got to lay out what they want to see from him this year. And that goes for Dalen Terry as well.
Well, I guess that's more so on the coaching staff to do that than it is so on the management side of things. I mean, for management to come out and say we don't have any expectations from a player is one thing, but if the coaching staff are falling into that same mantra and same way of thinking, then that player's not going anywhere. I mean, for one, they're not going to feel motivated to try and unless they've got some deep fire within themselves, they're not going to motivate themselves enough because they're going to be thinking, well, what's the point? I'll just sit here and get my money and that's it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of hoping that even though the management and Eversley said something along those lines, that the coaching staff take it in a different direction and do give him guidance and do give him achievements to try and get to. And I think that would be the case. I'd like to think anyway that would be the case.
Yeah. And like I say, I think the same for Dalen Terry. He's going into year 3.
Mm-hmm.
He could possibly get put into some sort of trade packages, maybe, if that, if there's anybody else around the NBA that wants him, because a lot of Bulls fans don't actually want him. But I just think with Dalen, I'm expecting a big year from him this year. He's the one player that I've seen constantly in the gym since the season's finished. I put a video on Twitter today that he's over in Milan in Italy at the minute, and he's still putting up shots in it. All right, he's shots in an empty gym, but people said they want to see him shooting 400 to 600 shots, 3-point shots a day. He's on holiday and he's still putting them up. So you can't fault his work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fault his desire to improve. And I think what people forget with someone like Dalen is he wasn't the star on his college team. He was like the second, maybe third guy on his college team. So from how he was in high school to what he was in college was completely different. And then he's had to try and fit into the NBA when he probably didn't even really fit on his college team as such. And it's like I said to you before, you can, these workout videos show you what they're working on. But the only way you're actually going to see it is in games.
Mm-hmm.
And Dalen, for me, can't improve his 3-point shooting in a game because things aren't set for him in a game, or they weren't last year anyway. Players aren't set for him. All right, you can stand in the corner and you can get the ball to him, and he will take the shot. But I don't think that's his main priority when he's going into a game. His main priority is not thinking to himself when he steps on the court, I need to be better at 3-point shooting. He just wants to do whatever to win.
Yeah.
And I think he gets minutes because of everything else he does. His aggression to the rim, his defense, his energy, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the offensive side of his game, the 3-point shot is obviously a big thing that has to happen. And the ability to create his own shot, he needs to work on. But I think he has actually got a pretty decent offensive game. He can pass the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can.
You give him that ball and he's going to run. And it reminds me a bit of Ayo, where he just needs to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that will come when he gets more minutes and he gets more understanding. And, he's learning off Demar. And as we've said with Demar, probably no better mentor. And like I say, to me, I just think year 3, Dalen, it's going to be a big year for him. And if it's not, then he's gone, basically. You can't be how we've seen Dalen at the end of year 3 and still expect him to be on the team.
Yeah. Okay. With Dalen Terry, the thing I've always said about Dalen Terry is I can't help but love the kid. There's something about him, and obviously DeMar sees that too, the way he's kind of taken him under his wing. There's something about him that's infectious and just really likable about him. It's partly to do with his character, but it's also got an awful lot to do with his approach to the game. And we've said before, you can teach a guy to dribble the ball. You can teach a guy to shoot the ball. You can even teach a guy how to play better defense. But 2 things you can't teach somebody is passion and energy. And Dalen has both of those things in spades. And if you can build some sort of a better game around that, then you've got yourself another Javonte, really. Do you know?
Yeah.
He's an energy guy that comes on in the limited minutes that he does get, and he's fearless. He's not afraid to shoot. He's not afraid to play. He's not afraid to attack. He does have a great court vision. Do you know? He can really pass the ball. He's not one of these players that doesn't do defense. He does do defense. He just needs squeaking again. He just needs a lot of work and a lot of polishing
Refining.
and refinement. Yeah, absolutely. And the team is there within the organization in order to help him do that. And by the team, I mean, the development team and the shooting coaches and all that sort of thing. And it comes down as well, you're talking about these like 2, 3, 4, 500 shots a day. That's all to do with building muscle memory. And if he's shooting the ball that much and he's hitting them in an empty gym and he's getting good reps up, when it comes to a game, he won't have to think about it.
Yeah.
The ball will come to him, he'll put the shot up, and muscle memory will kick in. I'm not saying he's going to become an elite shooter or anything like that, but if he's not afraid to shoot the ball and he's hitting them at a reasonable clip and he's coming in with energy and he can play defense and he can move the ball around, I think he's worth hanging on to.
Yeah, and I
Because
think
he's cheap. He's cheap.
I think the one thing with him is I think he's willing to put himself out of his comfort zone as well. You know, I don't know what it is he's doing in Italy, if he's on holiday, if he's come across for some sort of a fashion show or what. But he's still working out. You know, we've seen him do the Damar boot camps, and obviously he said about how early they were and stuff like that. And I think he's willing to put himself with different NBA trainers that take him out of his comfort zone and teach him new things. And, you know, because there'll be some players that they go to the same trainer every year. You know, Damar with Johnny Dribble Too Much. And I'm not saying that that's his comfort zone, but did Damar do that when he was younger? You know, or did Damar move around and try different trainers and, you know, going up against different players? I mean, when Dalen was first drafted, he was very involved with the Raptors sort of training camp and stuff like that, you know. So I think that is one good thing for him, is he will put himself out there and he's willing to learn. And coupled with his passion, his determination, I think, you know, it's only a good thing. Next two players, you know, they're on the team, Vooch and Kobe. To me, you try to look at building around Kobe now. You know, that's the direction they've got to try and go, I think, is bring Kobe on a bit more. You know, Vooch is just going to be there. You know, I think we've said enough on Vooch. Don't necessarily want him there. Ideally, if you can move him, you move him. But
I'd move him for a fart and a smile at this stage.
Yeah, you know, realistically, it's not going to happen, though, is it? And
no.
Like I say, for me, you build around Kobe. That's the direction I would take this team now. See how it goes for a year, then they're going to have to look at extending him. And if he takes even more strides, I mean, he's already back in the gym with Johnny Dribble Too Much.
Yeah.
You know, people are saying that he's going to win Most Improved next year. He was runner-up this year, so I can't see him winning it next year. I can't see him being he's not going to improve that much from last year next year, where he's in consideration. And it's dumber to me anyway, you know. The thing with Kobe is it's got to be consistency.
Yes.
If he can perform how he did last year, or for majority of last year consistently, then you've got that player that we want, the player for the future. I mean, obviously trying to get through these last ones quickly now, but what your take on Vooch and Kobe?
Yeah, neither of them are going anywhere. One I want to stay, one I want to get rid of. It's pretty obvious which is which. Yeah, Kobe needs to stay. Build from Kobe. Maybe not necessarily build around Kobe, but build from him and the young core and concentrate on that moving forward. As for Vooch, after last season, I know we're stuck with him to a certain degree, but if any kind of an opportunity came across the table to move him, I would certainly consider that very, very heavily, because I'm done with seeing the Vooch thing not working. I don't know if I can manage another season of watching him plodding around the court. But unfortunately, I think that's what we are. That's what we are going to be getting.
Yeah. So just quickly, and I know you probably want to spend a bit more time on him, but P will. I know he's your guy. You did put a video out last week, obviously after Darnell Mabry had kind of linked him to OKC.
Yeah.
You know, I know he's your guy. You want him to stay. And for me, I've said times, I'm done talking about him. You know, it's just, I think what we've seen is what he is. You know, and it can be good, and it can be bad.
Mm-hmm.
When he's good, yeah, pay him 20 million, whatever. But when he's the P Will that we see probably more often than not, he's not a 20 mil player. And what is it now? He's going into year 5. If we don't see enough of the good P Will,
yeah, yeah, I can't disagree with you. I can't disagree with you. I want to, but I can't disagree with you. He has had 2 vastly ruptured seasons, but yeah, like I said in the video I put out, if anyone hasn't listened to it, feel free to go back and listen to it. But what I basically said in a nutshell was, I'm giving him 1 more year. 1 more year. If he even, oh God, if he even stays, it's like I'm 13-year-old boy again, right? If he even stays with the Bulls, because you know obviously they've got to get that deal done. But if he does, I would be very much putting him on maybe getting a 2-year deal for him, 2nd year team option.
yeah,
I don't think that's something that agent and Bulls will go with, but ideal world stuff, that would be it.
yeah. I mean, to me, we're trying to move on from continuity, and P Will is the epitome of continuity with this Bulls team. We've continuously persisted with him, and we still don't know where we're at.
But if you temper your expectations of him, right, which we've talked about many times in the
I've got
past.
no expectations for him.
All right. Okay, maybe not temper them that much, but right, if people temper their expectations for P. Will, he's a pretty decent role guy. Do you know he is?
I mean, I put a piece out. I think it was last off season, and asking whether he was a bust or not. And I did say in that, I don't have the same expectations as someone like yourself. To me, he is there. He can have a night where he puts up 20 points and 8 rebounds, and he'll also have a night where it's like, where is he? For somebody that's as big, as athletic and strong as he is, he just doesn't do enough of anything for me,
right,
to warrant certain people's expectations of him. Is just, if he's back, obviously we'll talk about him and what we do expect to see of him. And one thing that we expected to see of him this year was more rebounding. And he just doesn't. We shouldn't be getting excited about a player like P. Will going into year 5, possibly getting 5+ rebounds a game. It should be a given. That's sort of where I'm at with him. It's just, I think he'll be back, unless another team really is really in for him. But if Bulls don't know what he is, do the rest of the NBA know what he is?
I still think that what could end up happening is another team will come in with an offer that's just beyond the reach of Bulls matching it. Because I think on paper, which is the whole problem Bulls fans have had with him, on paper, he is potentially something that a lot of teams would like to have as part of their makeup. And for that very reason, some team that's got a lot of capital, a lot of money to play around with could quite easily come along and say, let's take a punt on this kid and see, does he come good?
Yeah, and you just know that he will come good somewhere else.
Certainly when he plays against the Bulls, anyway. That seems to be the way it goes.
Yeah. So that's it. That's us dissecting the roster. I don't think we've done a very good job. I think it shows how hard the job is going to be for AK, but at the end of the day, it's his own mess. It's his own doing.
This is also true.
And he has to get creative, as he did back in 2021. But his creativeness has got to be for the good. It can't hamper our future again. You know, he's now got to. He's got to have a longer vision for me, not win now, not win this season. Basically, you know, I mean, why did we put into the DeMar offer the 2025 draft pick when most teams will probably be 3 years ago looking at that and going, that's going to be a strong draft? Bulls have just basically gone, so what? Have a draft pick.
Yeah.
And DeMar's not even going to be on the team when it happens. So, yeah. Like I say, 2 weeks out from the draft now, we'll start getting a few answers shortly of what sort of direction the team's going to go. And yeah, thanks for listening. We aim to be back next week. Maybe do a bit more draft talk, because at the end of the day, that's probably all there is going to be to talk about. But yeah, until then, as always, I've been Matt. You can find me on Twitter at MattCRedUK, and you can find us on all the socials at CRedUK.
And you'll find me on Twitter at NeilCRedUK. And on behalf of both Matt and myself and the Fans First Sports Network, we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. From us both, do remember, it's a Chicago Bulls thing, wherever in the world you are. Until next time, see red people and go Bulls.